Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you this week. We're going to talk about the interior of the Ford Mustang. This is the new generation of Mustang. Road test editor Zach Palmer sat in it, so we're going to talk to him here in just a minute. We also have news on the Cadillac CT5 Blackwing refresh. I honestly can't believe these cars are already due for a refresh, but we're seeing some spy shots. We're going to talk about that because at the end of the day, talking about American muscle sedans, that's just a lot of fun. The AC Cobra is back. The 911 GT2 RS may go hybrid. That's a rumor. And of course, there was an F1 race last weekend in Bahrain. We got to talk about that. Can anybody stop Max Verstappen? We're going to get into that. What have we been driving? The Kia EV6 electric car. I just turned that over to news editor Joel Stocksdale. And in return, I got a Toyota Sienna. Really happy about both, but I am very sad to see that EV6 go. I loved every minute of driving it. So, and actually my long-term update on that is going to be a little bit different. We'll also talk about the BMW X7 M60i and the Toyota Corolla Cross. Whew, that is a mouthful. I'm a little bit out of breath. Hey, we will spend some money. Road test editor Zach Palmer, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Yeah, man, I'm excited to get this show going. We got a lot of stuff from high performance V8s, high performance hybrids, some racing. This it's already shaping up to be a pretty neat looking show, I think.
All right, let's have some fun. You sat in the new Mustang. The interior is actually a pretty big story here because a lot of the new generation, some of, I would say almost like the critics have said, this isn't exactly a full new generation. It's more like a half generation. Ford's calling it an all new generation. We'll let the people fight that out in the comments and on the enthusiast, like the forums and everything. But what was the interior like? That's a big selling point, if you will.
Yeah, so this was really the first chance that we got to get into the Mustang. We've seen it from the outside. I've taken a lot of photos of it. Seen it at the Detroit Auto Show, Chicago Auto Show, you name it. But got to sit in the seat today, which is pretty neat. And nice. Like you were saying there, Greg, this is where the huge changes are. So the old Mustang was, a pretty traditional design. You had a smallish screen in the center with another smallish screen in front of the driver as the cluster. But this new one has a completely different center stack, center console. It has basically a wall of screens in front of you. Brings it thoroughly into the 2020s. And the real thing that Ford was emphasizing here was showing off the new tech that they had for their screens. They're using this thing called Unreal Engine, which if you're familiar with a lot of video game engines and how those run to get super smooth graphics, just next gen stuff that all appears, super high refresh rate, very responsive. It's the same tech that they're using in this Mustang. And it's actually really neat because you get a lot of animations in the screen that, it's stuff that I've really never seen before in any kind of a car. The way that they're able to really visualize the different drive modes, look at things like the launch control being visualized in the screen, the way you're able to move the car around on the screen. There's a lot of really high tech in here that I think would appeal to somebody who likes that really smooth video game processing and whatnot. But beyond the screen, of course, there's the interior in and of itself. When I hopped in, it very much feels like a Mustang. You sit a little higher than you probably want to. The shifter is right there. Transmission just kind of falls to hand. In that very cliche way of saying it, but that's the way it is. There's a lot fewer buttons all throughout. Frankly, there are more buttons on the steering wheel than there are throughout the whole cabin. I want to say there's probably like 7 or 8 buttons on each side of the steering wheel that you can swap through modes with. The adaptive cruise control, the lane keeping, like everything is on the steering wheel. And then in the center console, there's like 5 quick shortcut buttons. Because all the climate control stuff is in the screen now. All the radio controls are in the screen now. It's very, very pared down and simplistic feeling inside, just because everything is routed through that giant wall of screens in front of you. But yeah, all of the normal things that you expect from a Mustang are there. You're sitting in it. You don't have a really great view out. Is it better than a Camaro? Totally. The visibility is is slightly better than a Chevy Camaro. But yeah, you still feel like you're sitting in an American muscle car. You still feel sort of like you're sitting in that previous gen car if you remove all of the screens and button ideas from it. So you're going to feel at home inside the new Mustang, so long as you can adapt to those new screens, which we still haven't got to use while we're driving and whatnot. That'll be the real kicker. Like how easy is this stuff to adjust on the fly? Is it intuitive? Is it not? But I am hopeful for right now because just the actual performance of both the screen, the infotainment screen, and the digital cluster is really high. And one little Easter egg that I was super excited to check out that I'll sort of finish with here is that I got to see the Fox body gauges, which Ford is really high on about this for this generation, and I am too. I'm sure that everybody else that's seen them is as well. But no, and they're really, really cool. You can just swap into them like 2 or 3 different ways throughout the infotainment system. And they're just a white backed gauges when the headlights are off. But when you turn the headlights on, they turn green, just like they would in like a late 80s, early 90s Fox body Mustang. It is way cool. And you know, if I own one of these, I would probably be running around with it in that view most of the time, just because it is so cool and so retro. And we need more cars to do things like that. Bring back the retro gauges now that we have a digital cluster that can basically do whatever you program it to do.
Totally love it. My parents had a 82, 83, 84 Fox body, somewhere in there. And I do remember, I think it was that timeline, but it was a Fox body. And I remember the digital cluster, and I love that car. It went through, I think, 2 transmissions though, or something. Quality and reliability in the early 80s was not great. Let's put it that way. If you got a bad car, you got a bad car. But man, I remember that car. I loved it. They loved it too, but they were just like, you can't budget a new, major piece of the powertrain into a young family budget. Let's put it that way. But I'm with you. I would roll around like that all day long. So I see the Fox body kind of getting its due, if you will, kind of as an aside here.
It's absolutely come back. Values on them are going up. I remember when you could get like an old Fox body GT with like in decent condition for maybe like $4 or $5 grand.
Yeah.
Not happening these days.
Yeah.
And I think that Ford is recognizing that and giving us a little bone with the new Mustang.
Well, it's also as like population, as ages and people come into like sort of their prime car buying years, they remember cars of either their youth, their parents, or their teen years, college years. And for a lot of people now, that age is turning to be the 80s and the 90s, as opposed to more like the Dream Cruise era of like 50s and 60s. It's like, time marches on, and suddenly the 80s are a very long time ago, and, people want this kind of nostalgia. So I'm very excited to drive the new Mustang. I think it's going to be a winner. I think they did exactly what they had to do. And it sounds like, and by that, I mean, they stayed the course, but they changed it just enough that it's interesting. And it sounds like the interior was well executed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I really don't have any big complaints after crawling all through it. There could certainly be some people that are displeased about the fully digital experience, but I'm certainly a fan of what's going on here. So they didn't completely change it. It still feels like a Mustang for those that are worried about that.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's talk about the Cadillac CT5 Blackwing refresh. I honestly can't believe we're already due for a refresh for the Blackwings already. I drove the CT5 last fall, and I remember thinking, this is awesome. This is just red meat and potatoes, muscle sedan in a luxury package. It's not really what I think Cadillac is going to be doing for all that much longer. They're definitely moving to a fully electrified strategy, and they're even moving away kind of from this sort of like really like in your face demeanor. If you look at like the Lyric, the Celestiq is pretty over the top, but even some of the crossovers, they're not quite of just the aura that, the CT4 and the CT5, especially in the Blackwing editions, bring. but they're refreshing them. It looks like a pretty significant like refresh, quote unquote, up front. If you can try to see beyond the camo here in these spy shots. So I'll be interested to see what they do. This is kind of a strange comparison, but when you look at the Hyundai Palisade, it was a pretty good looking, SUV. And then they changed it for the refresh because you got to change it for the refresh. So once they peel back all this camo, I'll be curious to see, like, is this a slightly good change or a slightly bad change? So we'll see.
Yeah, just like you, I was frankly shocked to see these spy shots roll into our inbox the other day. I was like, the CT5-V Blackwing is already being refreshed. I feel like we just did the first drive of this thing like a year ago.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, but like here it is. I guess if you bought one, sorry, there's already a newer one coming out.
Yeah.
Certainly looks a little more aggressive up front. And from the rumors that I've seen poking around online, it looks like the even bigger changes will be coming inside. The CT5 in general, including the Blackwing, are getting a fairly big interior refresh where instead of the separate cluster and infotainment system, they're going to get Cadillac's wall of screens, similar to like what we see in the Lyric or even like the just refreshed XT4. So that'll, that was sort of like the one knock on these cars, if you're going to knock it for anything, is that it just didn't feel as premium inside as, say, like an E63 sedan or BMW M5. Theoretically, this would sort of amp up the luxury feeling inside the thing. Not as though the car needs much to like be better. Like I would still recommend it over pretty much anything else in this segment, as far as like a 4-door sports sedan with crazy power. But yeah, this will probably just make the CT5-V Blackwing even more difficult to beat. So yeah, I'm excited for it, and I'm more or less excited that Cadillac is just going to like keep making these things. Like a manual supercharged V8 sedan in the mid 2020s or 2023 is not, it's a bit of a rare bird to see them still looking to develop it and bring it forward for years to come. Has me excited.
That is and perhaps we maybe buried the headline a little bit here, but we do expect that 6.2 liter supercharged V8 to stay the course, which, I mean, I'm all about electric, but you really can't beat a 6.2 liter supercharged V8. That's awesome.
Plus a manual transmission. Nobody else offers a manual in this luxury class like this. It's one of a kind right now. So
yeah,
keep it going, Cadillac. Keep it going as long as you can.
Absolutely. So speaking of continuations, the AC Cobra continues. Subtle design tweaks. Supercharged V8, 654 horsepower. So that is going on. A little bit of a history lesson. A lot of people see this car and you think Shelby. Shelby American actually sourced sort of the car, the body from AC Cars in the UK back, 50, almost 60 years ago. So that company is still around in some form. And, this is around. It's a Cobra GT Roadster. So this is like a modern vehicle, if you will, such as it is. But it has the totally retro design. So we're looking for a full reveal in April 2023. I think that'll be interesting. That probably isn't the New York Auto Show, although, man, that would be awesome if they did. Who knows? You can get a 6-speed manual transmission with this car. That was the cohesion I was looking for with this and the Blackwing, even though they're two entirely different beasts. But I think this is cool. I'm glad this is still available in this day and age. I just watched Ford vs. Ferrari, which had the Shelbys in them, but just this design it's really held up over the years. I remember this is quite a few years ago, and I'm forgetting who named it. So this is kind of a half-baked story here, but somebody named the Shelby as one of the most iconic designs of all time for American. And I'm looking at that like, well, is that really an American design? Like technically that's a British design. So, I mean, sure, Shelby's as American as, apple pie, but this car has some British roots and they're continuing.
British design made famous in America. This thing is really like almost exactly what I would expect like an old Shelby Cobra resto mod would look like today. It has all of the modern touches: LED headlights, LED taillights, big brakes that actually work, some really sticky Michelin rubber on it, a modern engine. It has the 5-liter Coyote V8 in it with a supercharger attached to it, of course.
I feel like they've done that play once or twice before, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Stick a Ford V8 in a AC Cobra. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've seen this movie before.
Exactly. But no, I mean, it's a resto mod, but I feel like it's made even cooler because, well, it's AC that's actually doing the dang thing.
Yeah, that's nice.
So, you get it from as much of an original equipment manufacturer as it gets when it comes to Cobras. Now, will it be as deadly and as just absolutely crazy as the old one? I'm guessing not. I'm guessing it'll have some sort of traction control. So that'll be neat. And it looks like you can get it with an automatic transmission too, which I don't know. I don't think I would do if I'm out there buying a Cobra, but one could do it if they feel like it. $342,000 honestly seems about right. How much does a real Shelby Cobra cost these days? Definitely into the six figures, like deep six figures. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, if you love this look, and you want all of the modern day performance, this kind of looks like it. I hope that they build it, because it looks like it's coming soon, and hopefully they build enough for people, that everybody can get one that they want one. So I'd love to see this rolling around Woodward. It'd be so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I can't wait to see more news out of Ace. It's kind of cool. It's kind of, like I said, it's fun to be, talking about this in 2023. So let's shift over to the Porsche 911 GT2 RS. Rumors from Autocar is that it's going to get some hybrid running gear to enhance performance. I think this is just really a natural evolution. Like Porsche is actually quite good at hybrids and electrification. They use it for performance a little more than, like say Tesla does, if you will, as far as more like electrification and efficiency, although Tesla does do it with performance. But again, Porsche is all about the performance. Makes a lot of sense. It could really get that total system horsepower rating up to a lofty figure. Let's put it that. But what say you?
Yeah, I mean, this rumor of the 911 going to a hybrid powertrain, I feel, has been kicked around for a few years now at this point.
Yeah.
In a few different forms. This one to me seems like the most reputable, the most likely to actually occur, just because it really jives with my thinking of like, all right, where should the 911 go hybrid first? The idea here is the GT2 RS, which is the craziest, highest horsepower 911 that exists out there. And it's sort of like a test bed, an experimental model to a certain degree, and that like this, it's not one of the core models like a 911 Turbo, a regular 911 Carrera, even the GT3. This is like a super low production, low volume, throw the entire book at it, throw every single thing that we have at it sort of car. That's what it's been in the past. And if there's any place to introduce 911 buyers to the idea of the 911 having a hybrid, this feels like the place to do it. Like you can spend as much money as you want. Like this car will be an untold sum of cash to buy, and none of the buyers will care. And so you can just make this hybrid incredible. Porsche's proved that they can do that in the past. They have plenty of hybrid electric cars, just like you said. But the key here really is just going to be keeping that weight down to like, all right, this is an RS model. Is it still going to be good for the track? And coming up with a car that is actually better on the track because of that hybrid system than the previous GT2 RS. So if anybody can do that, I believe that Porsche has the ability to do so. So yeah, I'm all for this rumor, and I kind of hope it's true, because this is a nice, feel like an easy way to ease us into hybrid 911s, which I suspect for the next generation that comes around, we're probably going to be looking at that more hybrid than non-hybrid 911s. So we'll see if this rumor ends up being true or not.
They've been talking about, Porsche hybrids for like almost a decade, regarding the 911. I remember interviewing the then Porsche CEO at a European car show. I forget, I think it was Geneva, might have been Frankfurt, could have been Paris. I was fortunate to go to a lot of these shows back in the day. But I remember I asked them point blank about like the sports car hybrid and electrification strategy. And, he said something that I believe was in German that was kind of lost in translation, then he kind of walked it back. But this has really been on their minds for a long time. And I think like the GT2 RS is a good starting point. You raise a really good point. Just as like, how do you get into this without maybe alienating some people? How do you do it right? And like this specific 911 is so purpose built. It's so, it has such a focused mission that when you're going to add some hybrid technology to it, you've got to think, how does it work to achieve what we try to do with this car? Because it only has like, one and a half goals, if you will, which is to be wicked awesome on the track. So that added weight has to be distributed properly. And then you have to look at how the electric components increase performance. So I agree with you. I think that's a really salient point there, that, this is a good way to kind of dip your toes into it. And then, as you look at like, more mainstream 911s, well, how do you roll out some of this technology or similar technologies? And, I think if the 911 GT2 RS buyers can get on board with it, my guess is some of the other 911 buyers will as well.
Yep. And then Porsche can go ahead and say, all right, yeah, we sort of derived our new 911 Carrera hybrid tech from the 911 GT2 RS hybrid tech.
Exactly.
So you're getting the RS stuff. This is great. This is good. It all just meshes and works together well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have the story. We have some good context in there. If you want to see the original story, it was on Autocar. It was written by Greg Cable, who I used to work with at Auto Week. He was sort of like the scooper extraordinaire. He knows everything. Let's put it that way. And a lot of it's true. So, check it out. He's a great journalist, great European motoring journalist. So, head over to Autocar too. Got to give them a shout out for their original scoop. Speaking of performance, just segue over to F1. What'd you think of the race?
Man, looks like Red Bull is pretty unbeatable right now this year. They're looking a little bit like Mercedes did in their 7-8 year run of constant world championships. Right now, honestly, it's tough to see many people coming up and trying to challenge Red Bull. I even saw that Red Bull had both Max and Sergio turn their engines down with like about 10 laps left to go in the race. So you guys can go ahead and target a time that's about a second slower per lap than what you've been doing, because nobody's going to catch you. So, I would be scared to see what would have happened if they had turned it up and gone full at it the whole time, because nobody was even close to them at the end of the race. The only person that was on the podium other than a Red Bull was definitely the most exciting part of the race, though, with Fernando Alonso.
Definitely.
He might be the one that could save this season as far as making it exciting to watch. So huge pass on Lewis Hamilton, huge pass on Carlos Sainz there toward the end. Dude is, I believe, 41 years old now and just racing the wheels off of that Aston Martin. That has me most excited about this season, is just seeing where Aston goes. where can they go with updates? Can they get anywhere close to Red Bull or not? We'll see. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. That dramatic pass there on lap 46 by Alonso to pass Sainz, who's got to be like maybe a little over half his age. You know, I mean, that was that was cool. You know, I think it's nice to see sort of this generation of last generation of F1 drivers like, you know, like Alonso and Hamilton still kind of hanging in there. Like, you know, with Vettel retiring, who I kind of wonder if he might come back at some point. It seems like a lot of times, you know, F1 drivers sort of pull the Tom Brady and find a reason to come back in a year or two, which I think would be great. But it was nice to see, you know, a veteran, let's put it that way, have such a great race. I didn't expect this out of the Aston team. Did you? I was a little surprised.
It was definitely a surprise coming into preseason testing. Like all the rumors around preseason testing was that like Aston Martin was like creepily fast because they were setting really good times. Like Fernando was topping the timesheets, and everybody was like, "All right, maybe it's real, maybe it isn't. This is preseason testing. It's practice. This, you know, everybody has their engines turned down. Maybe it's not for real." But Aston Martin came out and did it in the race. You know, everybody was going at it. And, I mean, Fernando passed both Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz on track. It's not like one had a huge advantage over the other. The Aston was just quicker. So that's really cool to see. You know, we got to get Lance Stroll up there. Hopefully he's recovered from the cycling incident that he had before, and he'll be able to get up there with Fernando and challenge the Mercedes and challenge the Ferraris. But we could have a really interesting fight on our hands for second and third place here as far as the constructors go, because Ferrari does not look like a clear second place team right now. We saw Charles Leclerc actually went out from an engine failure. So yeah, it's wide open right now as far as who's taken second. There have to be a lot of changes from somebody to try and challenge Red Bull for first, though.
This in some ways reminds me of back when, like, you know, Vettel was at Red Bull, you know, 10 plus years ago, and they were just really rolling. Just the aura that they have again in the team does look unbeatable, but I also kind of wonder if, you know, in all sports, a team looks invincible, and then after, like, you know, a race or two or a game or two, like something happens. So, I mean, I'm not ready to just be like to crown Max already, but I mean, if I were a betting man, clearly he looks, you know, very amazing. Let's put it that way. But I don't know. I think there'll be some wrinkles here. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else could get into the fight here and at least make it a little more interesting. So, yeah.
I mean, you never know with reliability issues. Obviously, you know, Ferrari had a ton of those last year. Does Red Bull have this car fully sorted for this year? I'm sure they'd like to think so, but you never really know what could happen. Just, you know, Ferrari had a car that was ridiculously fast last year, but they couldn't do it. They were not good enough strategy-wise or reliability-wise to keep the car on track and actually win races. Red Bull has definitely proven that they can do it in the past, but they don't just hand you the trophies for every race. They actually got to go out there and race and win them. So, no, there are a lot of fun storylines, I feel, so far here. I mean, Aston Martin is definitely the most interesting, but like on the other side of the grid, McLaren's performance was almost like just as shockingly terrible as Red Bull's was shockingly good. Man, that was just brutal watching McLaren. Watch Lando Norris go into the pits 5 times. I feel like he came close to breaking a record for most pit stops in a race. Having to keep worrying about the hydraulics of that car, and yeah, man, that was brutal watching it. And Oscar Piastri going out. They have a lot of work to do down there. It was actually kind of brutal watching the broadcast because they'd keep going back to Zach Brown. They were talking to him on the pit wall throughout the race, and it's like, oh my God, McLaren's just having the worst race of their lives right now, and the TV has decided it's Zach Brown Day. So, oh man, yeah, fun race to watch though. I was entertained the whole way through.
Yeah, Bahrain is always spectacular. Like at night with the lights, the dramatic like camera angles. I don't know if that's like drone footage they're using or however they get it, but it's really just a spectacular race to watch, I think. Just my viewing habits this week, I recorded it and I've kind of been parsing it out throughout the week. My preferred way to do it is actually to watch the races live, especially when they're like European. I think it's a great way to wake up with a cup of coffee and kind of just like let your senses come to as you as you get into the race. But
yeah, this one was nice. It started at 10 a.m. Not everyone will be that way, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so follow along on Autoblog all season. We're going to have the race reports. We're going to try to actually expand our F1 coverage a little bit this year. We're not going to be Autosport. We get that, but try to bring you some special features. A lot of our editors are actually pretty big fans of Formula One. Not a lot, almost all of them are. And, we're going to bring some of our own expert analysis, such as it is. And man, I hope to get to a Grand Prix this year. I would love to get to maybe the one up in Montreal. Miami is one we've talked about. I wouldn't say no to Vegas, Austin, any of the ones that, that are out there. I guess, is Vegas on the circuit this year, Zach?
Vegas is on.
Vegas is on. Oh, man.
Yeah. It's the most expensive Grand Prix ticket of the year. Doesn't matter where you go in the world, you're going to pay more in Vegas this year.
I mean, what else is new, right? Formula One, just in general, Vegas, but...
Yep, it's where you go to lose your money. So instead of losing your money at a casino, you spend it all on the race.
Maybe Vegas might be the closest thing we get to like Monte Carlo, if you will, on the domestic circuit for a variety of reasons.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee all the celebrities will be there, all the big names. It's going to be a spectacle.
Sounds good. So let's talk about some of the cars we've been driving, and we've been in some interesting ones. I will lead things off with the long-term Kia EV6. I just passed the key fob over to news editor Joel Stocksdale, who I charged it. I quick charged it. Then he had to do a bit of errands, including one to like Toledo, Ohio. So he topped it off again. We're working out the battery. Let's put it that way. But man, I'll miss it. To me, it was like a great, just to break this down a couple different ways. I loved how it looked. It's a crossover, but it's still relatively kind of low slung. It looks like a sport wagon to me in a way that you just don't see very much. I get why they had to call it a crossover, a utility vehicle. Hell, it won Utility Vehicle of the Year from NACTOY, North American Car Truck, and SUV of the Year. But to me, this really felt like a sporty kind of wagon. They did just enough to make it a crossover, which you got to do in this day and age. They could have even... they've done some more things, which, they did. Joel drove the crazy powered one. I forget where he actually drove it, but, that's there if you want it. But just, our long-termer is really, it's a gem, it's pretty functional. You could plenty of room in the back. I didn't really have any major issues charging with it, which, charging just in general is hit or miss. Yesterday, at over 100 kilowatt hours. It was just ripping. I was able to top it off pretty quick, up to 80+% for Joel, without spending all day there. It was a nice sunny day. I dropped it into winter mode to kind of prep the battery, which was good because it was still quite cold. And thanks to you, Zach, you went on Amazon and grabbed this like a level 1 charger. So that actually worked out pretty good for me as well. I plugged into my just standard outlet in the garage, left it there all day Sunday. I was walking the dog. We're in the front yard, in the backyard, just around the house. So I didn't mind running that cord from the garage to the car in the driveway. And I think I got about 20 miles of range. So that was not bad. So
that's good to hear that the level 1 works out. And I feel like for a lot of people that honestly could work out. If you don't drive more than 20 to 30 miles a day, that's about how many miles you're going to recoup from that level 1 charger. And okay, maybe you want that level 2 charger to get much quicker charging at home, but I have a feeling a lot of use cases you might not even need it if you're not a really heavy driver.
Yeah, it really depends too. Like, what is your personal grid like? What do you have at home? What do you have at the office? Do you live close to something on the charging network? Do you have a DC fast charger close to you? Because that can really make a difference. I was very confident letting it run down because I know there's a fast charger that's fairly close, and it usually works pretty well. The worst experience I had was a very cold day. I guess this was last week. It was kind of late. It took me a good 45 minutes just to get anywhere. And it took a minute, it seemed like, for the battery or the charger to warm up and start actually giving me significant electrons. But the charging has been pretty good. I still enjoy, like, hey, it's lunchtime, I need to go charge the car, I think that's still fun. That's still a novelty. Like, I don't look and say, oh, hey, it's lunchtime. I need to go gas up the Chevy. That's not something that I look forward to. But let's go do a charge. Let's see how it goes. That's fun, So I will. It's a very solid car. Very, very good execution for Kia. I think it's very impressive how they were able to nail the design and also have a really solid execution with the powertrain, the range. They're well positioned. Just even this summer, I think, we're going to see significant gains in the infrastructure for charging. I know here in Michigan, they've talked about adding chargers on 75, which is sort of like the main thoroughfare that connects everything from like the state line all the way into the UP. So, more to come. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, and I'll also just mention we're going on 8 months with this car. No big issues to speak of.
Yeah.
I know that going and dipping your toes into a brand new EV, totally new powertrain technology can be a little scary. But our experience has been like virtually seamless with this thing. And it's cost us even less than most gas cars to run, because we haven't had to do an oil change.
Yeah.
So no oil change. It's just been super easy and chill to run. So that's really been on the up and up. There are no horror stories to speak of. It's just been seamless adding an electric long-termer to the fleet, which I'm really glad to see.
Sounds good. Can't wait to add another one.
Same.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the X7 M60i. You spent some time in that. What did you think?
I did, yeah. I'm a huge X7 fan.
Okay, that's interesting. I don't hear that every day.
I know. I honestly, if I had to like go and rank like cars in the BMW lineup that like execute and do their job really well, like the X7 is frankly one of their best products to me. As far as like three-row SUVs in this area, I would probably recommend the X7 over pretty much everything. And I specifically drove the M60i model, which is the hot performance version of it. Mm-hmm. It is indeed a true hot performance model of a big three-row SUV. It's a lot of fun to drive. It has that 4.4 liter twin turbo V8, 523 horsepower, 553 pound-feet of torque. The thing gets up and moves. It sounds great. You get some good burbling and crackling from the exhaust. It feels like a bit of an event to drive. It's not this boring three-row SUV. It's a BMW through and through, and that the thing is clearly engineered to be fun and interesting to drive for enthusiasts who care about that sort of thing. And in addition to it having all those great elements, it's also just like executes on the idea of a three-row SUV so well. It's not just really great at handling, it rides so well on the highway. The air suspension really gives you this nice plush ride. And it's rocking 22-inch wheels. They're not small wheels or anything. But it's just comfortable. I put a decent number of highway miles on it over my few days with it. And man, you could drive this thing a long ways with the family in the back, second, third row filled up. and just feel very, very comfortable. On the downside of this thing, and I should also mention that the X7 got refreshed for 2023, exterior design, interior stuff. What I'm talking about on the downside is the interior refreshing of this thing, specifically the tech. It has BMW's new iDrive 8 interface with their curved display. It looks beautiful. It looks really nice. It looks expensive. It's rather responsive. It has all the good screen things that you might like. It's just the UI is frustrating. So frustrating. Previously, BMW's old interface, you could get to certain things with just a tap of a physical button, like a heated seat button, or the tap of the traction control button to go into sport traction. If you want to change your heated steering wheel, boom, there's just a button on the steering wheel. That's no longer the case. It takes so many button presses to get to things, which is not luxurious in any way. It's annoying to do while you're driving. It's annoying to do when you first start the car up and the screen is loading up and it's like, I just want the heated seats on right now. And unfortunately, like, getting rid of all those buttons has like taken away from the interior experience to me. And the prettiness of that curved screen is just, it's not making up for it at all. But that's really like my one complaint about the X7. Like, everything else about this thing is just fantastic. I even love the design. The one that I had was this crazy Marina Bay Blue frozen. It's like a matte paint thing. I mean, I had multiple people throughout the week ask me, like, is this a wrap? Because it looks, it honestly, to a certain degree, it looks like it could be a wrap, like a really nice wrap. But no, then you say it's paint and everybody's like, oh, wow, this is a crazy paint job that you can get from the factory from BMW. Like I sort of said off the start, like, I have very few things to say that are not glowing praise for the X7, and M60i is definitely my favorite just because it has that awesome rumbling V8. So great week in it.
I feel like we're really kind of like boomeranging between like electrics, takes on electrics, and then like rocket ship like V8s in this podcast, which is, hey, it's not bad, you know. It's a time of transition, right? You know, so
we absolutely are. And you know what? Both are great. Both have their merits.
Indeed. Car and Driver got this thing to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Did you do that? And does it feel that quick?
It genuinely does feel that quick. And one thing, like, from the refresh that is even better. So I drove the pre-refresh one of these like 3 or 4 years ago. They gave it a new 8-speed ZF transmission. And it's noticeable. Like, the shifts when you're in Sport Plus mode are far more pronounced. You really feel like you're, slamming the paddles and the car responds to it. It's far more sporty and engaging than you would expect from a 3-row family SUV. Just sort of adds to the drama of the M60i. It's not boring to drive. It's genuinely fun to drive.
Okay. No, this is, the X7 is, I don't think we have too many people who truly dislike it, but it's not really, I don't know, it doesn't seem to have strong support in our editor, like, sort of ranks. Maybe you could be the one who builds some momentum. I don't know. It's interesting. Everybody has, their preferences and like what resonates with them. It's been a minute, honestly, since somebody has had a strong take on particularly liking the X7. I'm wondering if the M60 treatment is giving you, a little bit more good feelings, if you will, of it. If so, that's great. That's what it's supposed to do. I will say this. I'm kind of with you. I generally have liked the vibe that the X5 and the X7 give, like, their owners, as opposed to some of the other, like, Mercedes or Audi or Acura SUVs. I kind of like the feeling you get, if you will. Like, it's the steering, the design, some of the interior layouts. It does resonate with me. So you're not on an island. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, most of the beef, I feel, from others is about the design.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think if the big grille works on any BMW more than others, it's the X7. Like it's proportional to the face. It's a flagship for all intents and purposes. They sell more of these than they do 7 Series by a long shot. It should have like this big royal, hey, I'm a BMW face, and it fits. And I really like the refresh touches that they made to it. To your point about like the M60i, yeah, sure, I really do like the V8, but I drove the pre-refresh version of the X7 with the inline 6. That thing's really sweet too. It's so hard to fault the BMW inline 6. Going 0 to 60 in the low 5s versus this one Car and Driver did 3.8, that ain't so bad. That's still pretty dang quick for a pretty large family vehicle. And it sounds so sweet too. So I'd recommend either one.
Okay.
Truthfully.
Fair enough. Would you recommend the Toyota Corolla Cross?
That is a tougher sell.
Okay.
Oh man.
A bit of a speed bump there.
Yeah, definite speed bump with the Toyota Corolla Cross. If there's a car where the definition of like it's fine applies to it, I feel like the Toyota Corolla Cross embodies that. It's not a bad car, so to speak, but it just does everything to an acceptable degree. It has the tech that you'd expect from it. It has a nice little infotainment system, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, digital cluster, heated seats. The one that I'm driving is the XLE, costs over $27,000. This car sort of it exists because the RAV4 is so dang huge these days. So, well, here's a little Toyota that's a bit smaller. Still has very usable back seat space, pretty large trunk. Where it really starts to get away from me is driving the thing. It has a 2-liter 4-cylinder with a CVT and very little sound deadening. It's just buzzy. It maybe, say, all right, I'm getting on the throttle a little. Well, you really do have to get on the throttle to make it accelerate because it ain't that quick. So even if just trying to keep up with traffic, you're going to get the CVT, going to rubber band high up into the revs. And it's a very unrefined experience. It's, feels its price. So the handling is nothing to write home about. It rides, it's plush enough. I've sort of been calling it the college grad special.
Okay.
It feels like it's a car for somebody, you just got out of college, you want something that can hold all your stuff in the back, maybe a couple friends, something that's super cheap that has tech like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But you don't really care about the way it drives. You're not super, concerned about steering feel or handling feedback. This is a car that does all those things. It checks a lot of boxes, but it doesn't do it with the same excitement that say like a Mazda CX-30 does it. Doesn't have the styling presence of say like a Kia Seltos. It's definitely not as even fun to drive as a Kia Seltos with its turbocharged engine, dual clutch transmission, and that thing. There's just a lot of other cars that also do all of these like basic things, right and well, and they also drive better than the Corolla Cross. And that's sort of where I land on the thing. And that, sure, does it do a lot of the things, that it needs to do right? Yeah, but it just there are other cars that do all of those things, and they drive well and make you a lot happier than the Corolla Cross will.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a very thorough take. Let me put it that way. And that's how I often feel when I drive something that doesn't resonate with me. Like you can see, okay, might be the right car for, XYZ person, but here's some of the shortcomings. Here's some of the good parts. I mean, that's part of the job, reviewing the cars. And, I haven't driven the Corolla Cross, but it's not really on my short list of things to get into. Let me put it that way. There's a lot of things I'm really fired up to drive this year, whether they're performance, whether they're electric, whether they're just interesting, they're new, that type of thing. I'm really psyched to drive a number of minivans, but yeah, we'll see if that Corolla Cross makes its way over here. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be too enthused about it. The one saving grace for this thing that is coming is that they're going to make a Corolla Cross hybrid.
Okay.
And that to me will have some real appeal, because that is going to be a very efficient small crossover. This thing, it's just a regular 2-liter 4-cylinder. It gets the standard fuel economy that everything else in this segment gets. Throw a hybrid at this though, and I bet you're going to get in the 40s, which is pretty darn impressive for a vehicle that can hold as many people and carry as much stuff as this. So it needs something like that to get me excited about it, because as is, it's just it's a very budget oriented vehicle that others beat.
Yeah, I think that's a fair take. Should we spend some money?
Let's spend some money. It's a good one this week, it looks like.
This is a good one. All right. Ron writes in, hey there, I really enjoy the spend my money portion of the podcast, and I find myself in a quandary over my next vehicle. Currently drive a 2013 Audi Q5 with $120 on the clock. I plan to look for an EV in the fall. Okay, here's the catch. He's not really a new car buyer. He wants to get a used luxury SUV. Requirements: under 40 grand, precise handling, hopefully under $50,000 price tag, with great styling and a quiet cabin. He lives in North Carolina. Very seldom take road trips over 3 hours, and he works from home. So he's not a high mileage guy. That means you're going to have some flexibility, I think, when you're looking as far as like exactly what kind of EV might work for you. Also, I don't haul more than 1 or 2 people or lots of things. He's a fan of the Jaguar I-Pace, and he's driven one. With so many other cars out there now and the used market growing, I thought this would be a good ask. This is a great ask. Thank you for writing, Ron. A lot of things come to mind here. It's a really interesting time to be in the market for something exactly like this. Just to jump in here real quick, I do like the I-Pace as a potential candidate. I think you're on the right track. If you drive it, you like it, that could be the right vehicle for you. I really was taken by the design. It does offer respectable range, and nobody's going to say, hey, this Jaguar is not a cool electric vehicle. So I think you've already got a really strong comp. And then there's a number of things you could kind of toss in there as you make your decision. But what say you, Zach?
Yeah, man, the I-Pace is definitely a good one if you're looking for like that precise handling and great design, because there are very few EVs out there that I feel look as unique and striking as the I-Pace. And I drove one for the first time about a year ago.
Okay.
I actually did a pretty large road trip in one. And the thing is surprisingly fun to drive. It doesn't really drive like an SUV. It drives like sort of a slightly lifted hatchback. More car-like than SUV-like, which I'm guessing is why you like it so much. But I'm also going to throw 2 other alternatives out there.
Let's do it.
That are right around your $50,000 range. One that'll crest it, one that'll probably even be below it if you're looking at a used car. The one that I'm going to say that'll stretch your budget a little is a BMW i4.
Okay.
Specifically the eDrive 40. Those have been out now for about a year at this point, so you can go find a used one. I did some research on prices, and it looks like you can get one. None of them are really high miles at this point. The most miles I've seen on one are like 10 to 15,000 miles. And those are in the low 50s. You can get them between like $54,000, $56,000. So just above that $50,000 mark. But I think that it's gonna hit every single one of your requirements here. Great styling. I love the Grand Coupe look. You obviously don't need to carry more than 1 or 2 people around. So that means that a sedan would work out just fine. Plus, for those rare moments that you do have to haul stuff around, it's got a hatchback. You can put those rear seats down. It's super utilitarian in that way. And the i4, I'd argue, is even more fun to drive than the I-Pace. Other than that, going on the lower side of things, I would recommend the Polestar 2. And these you can get for well under the $50,000 range, especially if you're okay with some miles. And you can even go with a dual motor for the Polestar 2. That i4, you're only going to be able to get the eDrive 40, which is a single motor rear drive. The Polestar 2 will be quicker, not quite as luxurious as the BMW on the inside. It's a little more pared back with that Swedish styling that we're used to from Volvo and Polestar. But it's still a luxury vehicle. It still feels premium inside. And it also hits the fun to drive angle too. I drove a Polestar 2 probably about a year and a half ago at this point. Thing is shockingly fun to drive. Obviously, Polestar was derived. They've always been a performance side of Volvo. And they've kept that in the Polestar 2. And I even drove one that didn't have the performance pack with the Öhlins and the big brakes. And the thing was still very engaging. Could you get one with the Öhlins and the big brakes and it'd be even more fun? Totally. And it'd still be under $50,000. So yeah, those are my sort of two that I would recommend checking out. I would definitely drive both of them if you can. Polestar 2 dual motor specifically. It's really quick, probably just about as quick as that I-Pace that you're looking at. And the i4 is just going to be even more luxurious. And it has a little better charging tech than the others too. It's faster for fast charging. So if you go on those 3-hour trips, you'll be able to get back quicker. And I just like the BMW look and the interior tech that you get with it. So yeah, those are my two recs.
Okay, sounds good. Those are solid ones. I think you've been a big fan of, various models from BMW in this podcast. Interesting trend I'm picking up. And hey, that's fair. Sometimes cars resonate with you.
Yeah, there are a lot of new BMWs I like. Some I don't like so much.
Yeah.
But no, there's definitely been more that I like than dislike as of late, I think.
Sounds good. Couple others I will throw out there that don't directly address some of the criteria, but I think it's something as you look at your search, you might be interested. You could get like an EV6 or an Ioniq 5, the Hyundai version, right in that like price point, like 40 grand, 50 grand. So I know you don't want to go new, but if you do, you could. They're also just doing some quick Googling. You can find like a 2022 Kia EV6 Wind. I'm seeing one here on Carfax. It's got 20,000 miles on it. That is technically a used car. It's a 2022. Not technically, it is. So some of these, like the EV6 and the Ioniq 5, have been out for a little bit. So some of them have hit the used market if you want to approach it that way. I would probably still stay with a new vehicle from one of these models just because. But if you want to go used, that's there for you. The prices do seem to be pretty similar, though. You might want to drive one of those just to get a different take on the segment, if you will. Try that. So a couple other thoughts there. But yeah, Ron, let us know how you land. Good luck with your search. Check out everything on Autoblog Electric. Got to give that a plug right now. That's our hub for all things electric. We have a charging station finder on there. We're going to keep evolving that, get some more details in there. All the latest electric news from Autoblog. It's all in one place. So do check that out. So that's all we have this week. It's been a great show. Good hanging out, Zach. What's your spring beer?
Spring beer, man. I've got an Omegang Trace Voss in the fridge right now.
Sounds good.
Recently went to this beverage warehouse that had a wild array of stuff. It was a Belgian ale that I'm rocking right now. It's like straddling between light and dark. So sort of like how we're straddling winter and spring right now. I feel like it's a nice fit. 3
to 6 inches of snow is apparently on tap for Friday. So,
joy.
You're going to want to maybe go back with your winter side of that. I've still got my case of Guinness that I'm working through. It's March Madness, tournament's about to start. To me, this is the time you drink it. When it's cold, it's chilly still, but you get a little bit of sunny, it's St. Patrick's Day coming up. These are all good things in my book. But then you kind of want to be done with your Guinness by like April, because a lot of times you get into April and it can be like shorts weather, like on April 2nd, at least around here. And, Guinness is not a summer beer. Let's put it that way. You kind of want to be drinking it when there's like patches of snow still on the ground. So,
yeah, I might have to go break out some stouts for this weekend if we're going to be back inundated with the snow. Guinness sounds good.
All right. And if you like the podcast, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the show. Be safe out there. Send us your Spend My Monies. That's podcast@autoblog.com, and we'll see you next week.